strict progression of cause to effect, but actually, from a non-linear, non-subjective viewpoint, it's more like a big ball of wibbly-wobbly, timey-wimey stuff.
Hello, this is my Space and Time final project about Doctor Who. It's about the Whoniverse, the Doctor Who universe, how the time model works, book things, fandoms, paradoxes, and different kinds of loops that are in the Whoniverse, different asymmetries, the time models you have to accept, and things that go along with it. How the TARDIS works. That has a lot of explaining to do. You can travel anywhere in space, anywhere in time in this universe. And to accept this kind of time travel, you really have to accept static time as the model you're using. All times are real. They're all equally real. And while I may have my present, someone in the 1920s has their present, someone in Pompeii has their present, and while we're not all experiencing them at the same time, that doesn't make them any less real. This is especially important in the Doctor Who universe because you have one person picked up in 2012 and they can travel billions of years into the future, or they can go 20 years into the past, or even further back. They can go to another planet, an entirely different galaxy. Along with that, you also kind of have to go with B theory. You have A theory and B theory. McTaggart kind of disproves A theory a bit, at least in one sense. B theory, the one that comes with all these different asymmetries, the Doctor Who universe really utilizes these. For example, you have entropic asymmetry. That is to say, entropy or disorder increases over time. This is a pretty constant theme seen in Doctor Who, especially in the Cracks in Time story arc, which you see in the 11th Doctor mostly. This is basically to say that certain events that affect space and time very much can sort of cause a crack in the universe, and this crack is basically a whole other dimension. It's a whole other environment, and it feeds off of what's in this universe. It feeds off of things that are next to it, and the only way to really satisfy it is to give it something that also has a lot of energy and a lot of... At one point, a crack is satisfied temporarily because it sucks in hundreds of weeping angels, and weeping angels have the power to take someone and send them back in time. They are full of energy, full of space-time energy, and that's what can really satisfy these cracks in time. And it's really a crack in space-time. Sorry, I keep saying time, I mean space-time. These cracks really aren't going to be satisfied until they devoured the source of all this disorder, which all leads back to the Doctor and his TARDIS. Throughout this arc, you find out that these cracks are really being caused by the Doctor's TARDIS exploding while traveling in between something, so it's in the time vortex, which I will explain later. And while it's in the middle of flying in this vortex, it explodes. And instead of a big explosion with fire and smoke, it ends up being more like sending out cracks all throughout space and time. And this is the TARDIS. And when I get to explaining the TARDIS, you'll find out why it sends out all these cracks, because it is just full of energy. If anything has energy, it's the TARDIS. Now these cracks are just trying to regain that energy that was really spread out everywhere. Another asymmetry is fork asymmetry, which is that later events are caused by one event. An example of this in Doctor Who is Donna Noble. While she's out with the Doctor, she meets a fortune teller who brings her back to a place where she's in the car with her mother going to a job interview. She wants to turn left, and her mother wants her to turn right to go to a different job. However, it comes down to where there's a car accident, so she has to turn left. The fortune teller gives Donna Noble the chance to turn right, and she does. This creates an alternate universe. Because she turned right, she never meets the doctor, and the doctor dies as a result of this. The world is under attack now by all the things the doctor is not around to get rid of or defeat before they can get to the world. So the world is in ruin because Donna Noble took a right turn and didn't meet the doctor to keep him alive so he would save humanity. This goes to show how one choice can change a whole bunch of events and is a very good explanation of fork symmetry. Time loops and the closed time-like curves. Father's Day episode. This is where Rose wants to see her father before he dies, and when the doctor brings her to see him and her mother Jackie's wedding, she's not really satisfied. She wants to go be with him in his dying moments because she heard that he died alone. That's what her mother told her. The first time they go, she and the doctor are standing by and he gets hit by the car and he tells her to go be with him for his dying moments, but she's just frozen in place, and by the time she's ready, the ambulance is there and he's already dead. So she asks the doctor if she can try again, and he says it's risky, but he'll do it. Rose and the doctor watch Pete get hit by a car. Rose doesn't let it get that far this time. She goes and pushes him out of the way of the car, so now he's alive. And this instantly causes a paradox, because Pete was supposed to die. This causes a huge problem in the episode that isn't resolved until Pete finally realizes that he has to die, and he goes to sacrifice himself, and Rose is there in his dying moments, and it's then that she remembers, because now time is changing again, that there was a mysterious woman who was with him in his dying moments. And you realize that Jackie, Rose's mother, told Rose that Rose was with her father while he died. Another example is Blink, where we first really meet the Weeping Angels. In this episode, Blink, you first meet Sally Sparrow, and she's in this abandoned house, and she's just taking pictures because she likes old stuff. She enters a room, and she sees a word kind of hidden under the wallpaper, and as she peels the wallpaper down, it's warnings about duck, beware the weeping angel, and then she peels enough and she finds her name, Sally Sparrow, duck now. And she listens, and as she ducks, a rock comes flying through the window. She turns around, and there's nothing there but a weeping angel, and it's just an angel in the garden, like this. It doesn't seem like anything out of the ordinary for someone who doesn't know what a weeping angel is. Her and Kathy go back to the house the next day, and they're investigating, and Kathy thinks, oh, you're kind of crazy, you're hallucinating, and they hear a knock at the door, and someone's ringing the bell, and that's a little weird because this is an abandoned house, so why is someone ringing the bell like they know they're in there? So Kathy agrees to keep watch in the other room while Sally goes and answers the door. She does. And there's this young man, and he's kind of weird, and he's insisting that she takes this letter from him. And it looks old, and Sally's pretty freaked out. And Kathy's waiting by the door, listening, and you see a weeping angel. And every time it pans back to it, it's coming closer and closer to her. And finally, the weeping angel is right behind her, and it goes back to Sally, and she finally accepts the letter from him, and she opens it and she reads it, and it's from Kathy, and it's from years ago. It's from the 1900s, and she turns around and she's calling for Kathy, and Kathy's not there, and she's looking through, and she's getting upset because there are pictures of Kathy, and pictures of Kathy looking older with kids and a husband, and a letter from Kathy saying, "Oh, it's been minutes since you last talked to me, but it's been 60 years for me." And the guy introduces himself as her grandson, and Sally is so freaked out by now. And eventually she takes it, she reads it, she's sort of starting to believe it, and it tells her to go to Kathy's brother Larry. So she does. And Larry's watching this video of who we know as the Doctor, and it's like he's having one half of a conversation. He just says random things, well, seemingly random things, but are really a conversation. You just don't hear the other half of it. Eventually, Larry and Sally go back to the house, and they're watching one of the DVDs, and Sally is having a conversation with this DVD recording of the Doctor. And Larry thinks this is so weird that he takes out the transcripts of what the Doctor's saying, and he starts filling in Sally's part in what she is saying to the Doctor, because that's just the weirdest thing to him, and he wants to share it with all his internet friends. Then it gets to the part where the Doctor is warning Sally about the weeping angels, and it gets to a point where he's saying, "I don't have the rest of the transcript, so that means they're coming for you." And that's when they start coming, and Larry and Sally have to go and try not to get killed. Sally still has these transcripts, and she's questioning, how does he get them? I still have them. I don't understand. And Larry insists, it'll happen. Some things just aren't explained. And then, lo and behold, the Doctor and Martha step out of a vehicle, and they're kind of rushed and looking for something. And Sally runs out there with transcripts in hands, and she's like, "Doctor!" And he turns around and he's like, "Oh, what? Who are you?" And he doesn't know who she is, and she realizes this, and she's like, "It hasn't happened to you yet." And he's like, "Okay, I don't know. Time works weird for me." And so she gives him the transcripts and tells him, "You're going to get stuck in 1969, so make sure you have these with you." And then he asks her name. She says, "Sally Sparrow." And that's that. And that really is one of the more prominent time loop episodes that you really see the closed circuit loops within the space cone. Now that we're done talking about B-theory and some of the asymmetries seen in Doctor Who, I would like to talk about the different theories of time travel that are seen in Doctor Who. Now, typically, you really hear about three main theories about time travel. Doctor Who typically uses two of the three of them, because the third leads to lots of paradoxes, no matter how you really think about it. The two that Doctor Who utilizes most are the fixed timeline and the multi-universe theory. And to begin, the fixed timeline. While we know how the Doctor experiences time might be wibbly-wobbly, there's a sort of fixed timeline, even though the actual lines within it can get kind of squiggly. Here I have what I'm going to call the general fixed timeline. What you have is an event here and a person here who I'm going to call Murgatroyd. Over here we have how the Doctor experiences time in purple while going around the general fixed timeline. This is how he travels through time, and each point it hits the red timeline is where on the general fixed timeline that he really experiences, except it's not in the same order how looking at the general fixed timeline really is. So while the red line has an order that you can look at, how the Doctor and his companions experience it is not necessarily in that order. Looking back to figure 1, you have Murgatroyd. Let's say that the Doctor picks up Murgatroyd and takes Murgatroyd back to what is marked as event. Murgatroyd knows this event happens, and they happen to arrive right before it. Let's use the instance of the fires of Pompeii for an example. Donna knows about Pompeii and its destruction by Mount Vesuvius. However, she is surprised to find that they are in Pompeii the day before Mount Vesuvius explodes. When it comes down to it, there are different beings living within the volcano who are going to either take over the world unless the Doctor sets off a self-destruct, which will in turn destroy Pompeii. Something that is in her history when she is in the years she was picked up in is now her present. Say Murgatroyd travels back, and whatever her and the Doctor are experiencing ends up causing this event that Murgatroyd knows about in their present, but they're now from where they are on, from where Murgatroyd is right now. Here, this is her past, but while she's here, it is her present. And that is why it's important for us to accept B theory when looking in the Doctor Who universe. You need B theory and you need this static time, because Murgatroyd is experiencing a time that she once thought was in her past, but is now her present, because all these times are real. I'm not in the 1920s, but that doesn't mean the 1920s aren't real. I'm not in the year 2030, but that doesn't mean the year 2030 isn't real. And that doesn't make these times any less real. The passing of time and the experiencing of time are two different things. The red timeline is how time really looks from a distance. If you take a step back and look how time passes, you see this red line. If you're experiencing time and you're with the Doctor, your line is going to look all wibbly-wobbly like the purple line. But if you're a normal citizen, like me or you experience time in this red line order. Time passing and time experience are not the same thing. On to the multi-universe theory. This is consistent within the Doctor Who universe, although the TARDIS typically cannot travel to other parallel or alternate universes. Overall, they are not accessible by the TARDIS, but we do know they exist within the Whoniverse. I believe that's about it for this video, but this is only the beginning. I hope to have at least 1 or 2 more videos, and I'll join you next time with the time vortex and the TARDIS and how that works.